Okay, so I haven't really done a deep dive video into a comic book on this channel, and I don't know how well I'm going to do with this. Now, I'm going to warn you right out the gate that there will be spoilers in this video. I haven't done a video for ISOM 1 or ISOM 2, and what I would like to do is once the arc is wrapped up, do a review of the entire arc from ISOM 1 to ISOM 2. But I want to talk about Alpha Core number 1 since it's not a connecting story. It's a story that introduces this team, gets you kind of used to how the team operates, and gener- genu- generally, can get the word out, gets you interested in Alpha Core. The book opens with a robbery in progress. The criminal in question, he's a just a crony, not really a super important character, and you'll understand why I say this. His name is Cecil Moreno. Now, when it opens up, you see him holding a woman hostage at gunpoint with a suicide vest on, and he is at a bank, Texas Trust. This is all in Flores Park, Texas, the fictitious town, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's kind of modeled after Dallas. I could be mistaken, but uh, and he is, obviously threatening to do some harm. The police, they're obviously there. Very tense situation. Well, out of nowhere, Brian Solari shows up, grabs the dude up. He asks the dude while they're in the air, how do you disarm this? And the dude, he has no clue. And he says, all right, well, then I don't need you. Rips the vest off the, well, the dude was shooting at him as well, which obviously that didn't do anything to Brian Solari. And he throws the dude into this pool below them at this hotel, toss the vest up into the air, the vest detonates. He grabs the criminal. There's this interaction that's had, about different things that's going on. That opening scene was so action packed. If it was a movie, it would have given you no time to breathe. The colors popped. The art was very engaging. The art signified motion. Very good job by Joe Bennett. Um, so that's how you open up. So right out the gate, Chuck Dixon sets the tone of the story and the dialogue, and Joe Bennett sets the tone of the art. You're immediately hooked, in my opinion. I am. Can't necessarily speak for anyone else. So this dude goes to prison. Well, there's an interaction between Brian Solari and an officer. I cannot remember this officer's name. I don't think I wrote it down. But there's an interaction. Well, Brian Solari wasn't supposed to be there. And the reason is there's something in the Rippaverse called the Fawcett Act. Now, I believe the Fawcett Act primarily deals with Alphacore, but it might be Accepts in general, but I think it's just Alphacore because they are a branch of the police in a roundabout way, and I'll explain more about that later as well. So anyway, Brian Solari gets into this intense interaction with this officer, and he's pretty much like, you were not supposed to be here. What the Fawcett Act says is in order for Alphacore to engage, there has to be confirmation of an accept in, whatever police situation. And then they can, swoop down, engage, and do whatever they have to do. That wasn't the case here. So Brian Solari in this book is kind of set up way different than what I thought. Initially, I thought Brian Solari was the classic Boy Scout character, can do no wrong, does everything the right way, by the book every time. And he is ish. This is what I say. He is a mix between Captain America and Wolverine. He paints within the lines, but kind of rebellious in a certain way, but not completely off the rails rebellious. So he wouldn't be Wolverine in that regard, but he's not painting within the lines so much that he can't see, well, I might have to go outside the lines for this scenario to work. So, interesting character, and I actually liked him a lot. I did not think I would like him as much as I did. So there's that interaction. You find out about the Fawcett Act. I can't remember if it was in that scene exactly. Somewhere along the lines, you find out about the Fawcett Act and the fact that Brian Solari should not have been there at that time in that interaction because there was no accept. Now, if he would not have been there, there would have been a lot of lives lost. And one of the things he asked Cecil once he came back down and grabbed him up, he was like, "What did you have in that vest? You hear all these alarms. What did you have? C4 Syntax?" And he's asking him, and the dude was like, "The vest went off." He had no idea that the vest was even active. What is that about? A lot of interwoven things into this story. So that's how it opens up. Okay, so some things happen. Now, I'm not going to give all of the details of the book, but there is spoilers, obviously. Some things happen in between, and then you get into this situation where the cops are called to a situation which leads me to believe, this interaction right here leads me to believe, which only makes sense for the story, that there are corrupt cops in the Florist Park Police Department. And here's why I say that. The cops show up to this house to arrest this woman. What they arrest her for, and this comes out in a book, she's being arrested for stealing some things out of the Dollar General, but the amount of force they show up with almost doesn't make sense. Alphacore is called because there is an except that is here. That except is Galvin James. He has some kind of powers whereby he controls electricity. He comes out blazing. And it looks like this is not going to go well. Well, Braxwell gives him a flying kick to the head. And like I said, the dialogue was great. The art popped, the action. You felt like you were in an action movie while you were reading the book. Kicks Galvin in the head. Then he douses Galvin with a water hose, shorting him out. They have this special unit come in. They take him to prison. You see the woman being arrested, and she's like, for robbing the Dollar General? Like, this is really what all this is about. I'm going to tell you what I believe happened. It's just my theory. There are corrupt cops that needed a way to get Galvin James into prison with that other criminal that's been arrested that tried to hijack the bank. And there's more behind that. And in order to get Galvin James in prison for another reason, you have to create a reason. And this was the reason that was created. This is why I believe there's corruption in the Florist Park Police Department. And this is your first indication of that. Okay, so that happens. You figure out somewhere along this course, you figure out that Michael Copper was actually behind that bank robbery. So Lillian Renashi, she walks in. They're business owners, wealthy business owners. They're like I guess you could call them the couple kingpin of the Rippaverse. So they're reminiscent of the kingpin in that they're running a criminal organization under the disguise of legitimate businesses. And they also have powers. I'm not really sure what their powers are. I did not buy the Dokuman card, so I don't really know much about them. And I kind of like it that way. I like figuring out things as time goes on. So she busts in the office and she asks Michael Copper, are you behind this? And he was like, yeah, he's cocky. The whole thing he was trying to do is there's some financial records in safety deposit box in this bank, I guess, that links them to some things, and they're trying to get a hold of this to get rid of it. or maybe it belonged to somebody else. Anyway, they're trying to get rid of this, and they sent this guy in there to take care of that. He did not take care of it. So what then happens is he thinks Michael Copper thinks it's all taken care of. He hasn't seen the news. Lillian Renashi is like, no, have you not seen this? This was like, you weren't thinking. And he finds out that Alphacore shows up. Now, he didn't think Alphacore was going to show up because he did not hire an except to do this, because he would be familiar with the Fawcett Act. As long as there's no except, Alphacore will never show up. We have the upper hand. So that happened. So now this dude is going to prison. So now this is a loose end, not tied up. So what does he do next? Well, Lillian concocts her own plan. She's like, I'm going to fix your mess. But along with that, he has something going on as well. And this is where Galvin James comes in, the dude who can control electricity. A lawyer shows up. Ridley Venison shows up. As the police are talking to Cecil, the guy from the beginning of the book, Ridley shows up and they're like, his lawyer's here. And you can see even Cecil's like, my lawyer's here. What? I didn't even know I had a lawyer. Lawyer shows up and he's like, okay, what did you tell the police? And he's like, I didn't tell them anything. The only thing I told them is they never told me that the bomb was live. Something like that. I can't remember the exact line, which of course is too much information. So now they know he was hired by someone else, which leads to an investigation. So clearly he's messed up. You see Ridley get up from the table with almost a smirk. And he's like, I got to go see my other client. Who's the other client? None other than Galvin James. I don't remember. I'll have to go through the book again to see what happened when he went to see Galvin James. So what they did to Galvin, there is a device that had him grounded so he couldn't use his electrical powers. There were some like bracelets he had, like cuffs, not really cuffs. They were like shackles around his hands, special shackles that had him grounded. I think, and like I said, I'll have to go through the book and read again to make sure. I think the lawyer, Ridley Venison, handed him something to loose those shackles. He calls an officer for a cigarette. That officer was like, oh, yeah, I guess I can give you that. There's no electricity in, cigarettes or, lighter. But he grabs the officer's radio. When he grabs the radio, of course, he's, taking all the electricity. A female officer comes in. She goes to use a taser. Mistake. And he's like, oh, man, this hurts so good. And other officers like, no, don't. Anyway, that helps him. He gets out of the cell. And who does he go to? The first person he goes to? Cecil Moreno. He fries this dude. Fricassee fried. Done. At this point, now, mind you, all of this action is happening within, I think the book is 100 plus pages. I can't remember the exact page count, something like 104, something around there. This is oh man, is it 20 pages in? 20, maybe if that? Right out the gate, you are getting to it. This plays out really, really well. So, he escapes. Galvin James escapes. Alphacore shows up. They're, you see where their investigative work kind of comes in. And now you see Ingrid. Ingrid's powers, I'm not really super familiar with yet. I know she has this, it looks like some kind of plasma charged lasso or something like that. But I'm not really sure how this connects to her powers or what her powers are exactly. She goes out with another officer named Willink, who actually is an except, but he has kept it hidden. He has the power to control metal, similar to Magneto, but he's kept it hidden. He doesn't really have control of on his powers, so he can't really do much with it. So they're going to find Galvin James, and they, find his last known contacts. They find where he's at. He's holed up in this apartment. They get in there. Okay, so how they get in, this is how we find out that Wilkins is an except. Wilkins, when they couldn't get into the door, they heard the TV goes off, they can't get in, and he was like, I got that. And Ingrid is like, you're an except. And he's like, yeah, but I'm not like you guys. I don't really have, control of my powers. You guys are great. I'm just, normal dude. I don't have that much impact with these powers. Anyway, they get in there, scuffle ensues. Galvin James thinks he has the upper hand. He's like, you're stuck in here with me. And Ingrid, being a gangster she's like, no, buddy, it's the other way around. You're stuck in here with me. Eventually, after all that happens, he goes out the window, and I don't know if he's dead. You see him outside on the ground, looks like he's all broken up. So I'll just wrap that up. I'll leave that there. So he's dealt with. That situation is tucked away. Now, how is Lillian Renashi going to solve this problem that they have now? They have to get this file. So she found, and I don't know why I didn't write his name down. There's an except that has the power of persuasion, kind of like a Jedi. He walks in a bank, convinces the bank manager, hey, let me in this vault, this safety deposit box. He pulls the papers out of the safety deposit box and puts a jump drive in the box. Now comes in a dude his name was Billy Bob, and he has the power of like the Human Torch. Funny, his name is Billy Bob. I think they called him another name, but a lot of these characters go by their names. So he's Billy Bob. Anyway, he shows up to the bank. Brian Solari happens to be there because they're investigating, everything that was going on. So Alphacore has this flying base, kind of like the helicarrier. They call it the Eagle's Nest. Like during the book, they were actually trying to, like inside this book, they were trying to come up with a name. Eagle's Nest is kind of what they went with. In the Eagle's Nest, they got some tapes from the bank, video footage, and they noticed this guy. Well, this was kind of after the fact, so I'll save that. What I was getting ready to say. He gets there. The dude that has the power of persuasion that has now replaced the files walks out of the bank. They have no idea what's going on. And now the Billy Bob, he's now ready for action. He's ready to light it up. Brian Solari is trying to tell him, hey, bud, look, this is not the fight you want. There's some back and forth that goes on. He goes into the bank vault. One of the smart people who work in a bank, they understand there's no oxygen in this vault. If this dude has the power to manipulate fire, we're going to starve him of his fuel. He closes the vault, seals it. The dude, succumbs to hypoxia, collapses. They open the door. Fire department rolls in, douses him down. They take him away. He's tucked away now. The dude that has the power of persuasion, he's still at large. You don't know where he's at this point. But there's still loose ends. And this is something that Lillian, she's really pissed at Michael Copper. She is like super pissed. Like you have botched this up. But she has a well thought out plan to sew all of this up where there's no connections, nothing that links back to them two or their businesses. So the lawyer is now a problem because he links these two people, both Cecil Moreno and Galvin James, because he signed in to see both of them. That's a loose end. He can at some point, if you follow the trail back far enough, then he'll go back to Lillian and Michael Copper. That's a problem. She has the guy that has the power of persuasion show up somewhere where the lawyer happens to be. They're in a bathroom talking. He had just had some interaction with, I think it might have been Ingrid he talked to. Ingrid and Wilkins. Might have been. I can't remember exactly. I'll have to go back and look. Anyway, he had a talk with two officers, goes in a bathroom, after he, has his interaction with them. The guy that has the power of persuasion walks in a bathroom. He walks out. The two officers walk in wondering, where is the officer, Ridley Vanison? He's jumped out the window. The dude that has the power of persuasion convinced him to jump out the window. Now, go back to the Eagle's Nest, where they're peering over all of this footage. They even have footage from the police precinct when the lawyer jumped out the window. And they notice a common denominator, the dude that walked in the bank and the dude that walked in the bathroom. So now they're putting two and two together. oh, maybe he convinced this dude to jump out the window. They kind of put, those pieces together that he's an accept. So now they send Brian Solari. They're going to get him. They send Brian Solari to get him. Meantime, they recovered this USB drive out of that safety deposit box. So their tech person, which is, you have to read the story. I'm not giving you all the details, but this is definitely spoilers. But there are things I'm leaving out so you can go read the story and get the whole picture. So their tech person, they're talking about this jump drive, and she's like, yeah, I don't want to put this jump drive in a computer. We don't know where it's from or what's on it. I'm not going to do that. Brian Solari, kind of a hothead. Like I said, he is a Boy Scout, but kind of a hothead. He's like, what's the worst that could happen? Puts it in a computer. Their systems go crazy. There's some kind of shock wave. It blows their tech person, I can't remember her name, forgive me, out of her seat. They see a red skull on the screen. And now this floating base, this eagle's nest, is headed for the police precinct. I think they call it like One Police Plaza or something like that. Big police precinct. It's now falling out of the sky, headed for it. And guess who's controlling it? Lillian Renashi. And she's laughing the whole time. You see, they thought that the police were going to get this, put it in one of their computers, and they were going to destroy the police precinct. Maybe they would have had control of the eagle's nest as well as a result. But this is even better. They get to crash the eagle's nest right into the police precinct. So before that happened, Braxwell had flown down because he was called, because they went to get this Accept, the guy that has the power of persuasion. They let him know what was happening. So what he did, he put headphones in his ear and he's bumping none other than Dr. Dre. Nothing but a G thing. It's hilarious. In a good way. I was like, okay. So as the dude that has the power of persuasion is talking, he's not hearing anything he says. He takes out some tape, tapes his mouth, gets him out of there. There's some other dudes he has there with him, like some enforcer types, and they think they got the upper hand. Braxwell put the beat down on these dudes. He beat the brakes off these dudes. Then he gets a call about what's happening at the Eagle's Nest. He immediately flies off. Him and Brian Solari are trying their hardest. They're trying their hardest to keep this thing from crashing, but they can't. It's coming down fast. The commander of the Eagle's Nest, he won't abandon. They're like, yo, we're not abandoning this if there's a chance. Who do you see as this big monstrosity is barreling down on a police precinct? You see Wilkins. And Wilkins is like, yo, I don't know if I can do this, but I can't let this happen. He musters up all the power he can, controlling the metal, and stops the Eagle's Nest short of destroying the police precinct. And then he dies. Yo, I loved his character. And I like the fact that in a Ripperverse, he says when somebody's dead, they're dead. We're not going to do this dead coming back to life. Nah, he's gone. Over. And I like that. As much as you were involved in that character, I like the fact that, okay, this character is gone. No more. Maybe there'll be somebody else down the road that has his powers. Also, here's another thing I noticed. Galvin James was saying some weird things. It wasn't English. It was almost like it was spells. And I didn't catch that the first time I read through. And I saw it again and I was like, interesting. And it made me think about something that I saw in ISUM number 2. Another video for another day, and I'll connect those two dots. So anyway, now Wilkins dies. I was just like, oh my goodness. The book ends and you see Alphacore going to have a chat with Lillian Renashi and Michael Copper. They're getting ready to go on vacation. They got a private jet. You know, they're talking amongst themselves, some banter. Yo, we got to go on a vacation after this happened. This was real. Alphacore shows up. And Ingrid is like, she's listing off all of the businesses and shell corporations they own until that tree finally gets to them two. And she's pretty much telling them without telling them, we know you're connected. We can't necessarily make the connections fully, but we're on to you. So now Alphacore is on to what's going on with Lillian Renashi and Michael Copper. So they're like, whatever, we're getting ready to get on our plane. Ingrid, being the gangster she is, takes one of her powered lassos and destroys the left engine on what looks like a Gulfstream, a private jet. So as they're walking away, Brian Solari is like, yo, you're going to have to explain this later on. And she was like, I'll finesse and come up with something. Yo, the book is done exceptionally well. That whole entire story is great. And this is a book worth reading. Trust me.